Okay, so welcome to GS 182, which is your introductory biology. My name is Vincent. You probably got an email from me last week already. If you haven't seen my email, then maybe you should go check your school email, which would be your my.centennialcollege.ca email. If you just come in, there are some handouts on the side. Please help yourself. So, before we begin with the lesson, I'm just going to take a little bit of time to tell you about the course, what you can expect from it, what kind of evaluations there are, and just the format of how class is supposed to go. Okay, so please feel free to stop me anytime if you have any questions. Okay, so my name is once again Vincent. I'll type it here for you. You can just call me Vincent, it's fine. Or if you want, you can call me Sir or Mr. Wong, but Vincent is fine. If you want to contact me, here is my email. This information is available on the first page of all the lecture PowerPoint slides in case you need it, but that's the email, okay? Sometimes you might find like a different email on eCentennial that has like a 41 on it. Don't worry, come on in. Yeah, and that works as well. But this is my preferred email. Okay. You might also find a phone number somewhere on the college webpage. Please don't call me because the phone is it's not on me, right? Like if you call, you will always get to the voicemail, and it's just much faster if you email me. Okay, I answer email quite quickly. If you send it to me during the day, I probably will reply to you within the hour or so. There are some handouts over there. And if you do not hear back from me for more than a day, that means I did not get your email. Okay, maybe you sent it to the wrong person, maybe it got lost. So just send it again, and I'll reply you as soon as I can. When you send me email though, please make sure you tell me you are from section 203, because I have several sections. And if you ask me, when's the quiz, for example, like it depends on which section you're from, right? So in order for me to get the answer to you as quickly as possible, just tell me which section you're from, include your student number if possible. Okay, so that way I can give you the most accurate information. In terms of the course, it's separated into two halves, first half and second half. We'll just call it like Unit 1 and Unit 2. Everything will be posted online, okay? Like all these notes I'm writing. I do encourage you to copy whatever you need, but if you miss something, it's not a big deal. I'll post it online. So for Unit 1, for the first half of the course, it's going to be Lecture 1 to Lecture 5. And then for the second half, it's going to be Lecture 6 to Lecture 10. And in the first half, you will have two quizzes. Quiz 1, Quiz 2. There's going to be a lab 1, and there's going to be a test, okay, test 1. The quizzes are 10% each, and the lab is also 10%, and the test is 20%. Okay, you guys are all here for biology, right? Just want to make sure, because sometimes people realize they're in the wrong class like half hour in. Okay? This is introductory biology, okay? So 10% each. The quizzes are usually like, for example, the first quiz is going to be Lecture 1 and half of Lecture 2. Okay? And then Quiz 2 is going to be the second half of Lecture 2 and then Lecture 3 and so on and so forth, right? So I'm just going to break it down for you as we approach the quiz dates, okay? I'll tell you exactly what's on it, what's covered, and how you can prepare for it. But typically, it's a lecture plus a little bit. Okay? You will have your standard multiple choice questions. There are short answer questions, maybe some labelings, and some application questions. Again, not to worry about it too much. I will tell you exactly what's on it as we approach the quiz dates. Usually, we will have some review videos for you to watch. We will do some practice questions during class. It's very straightforward, okay? The quizzes, as long as you study, you should be okay. The lab you will be doing in person. You will be working in groups of 3, usually 3 to 4. And it's going to be happening in the lab classroom, okay, which is the Monday's class. We meet every Monday and Wednesday, right? So Monday happens in the lab and Wednesday happens in this room. There's going to be a lab report that you have to write for the lab, and it's going to be a group work, right? So you guys can work together and submit one copy, and everybody will get the same grade on it. The test will cover everything in the first half, so lecture 1 to lecture 5. Then for the second half, which is going to happen after the reading week, or we call it engagement week here at Centennial. And it's pretty much the same thing. So quiz 3 will be 10%, quiz 4 will be another 10%, and then you will have another lab report, and then you will have test number 2. Okay, so the second half is not really related to the first half. Okay, the test 2 will only cover things in the second half. Okay, so after the first test, you can just forget about everything. Okay, burn the notes, and then you will just, chunk size. It's easier for you to to memorize not as much things, right? Morning. There are some handouts over there. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So there is a schedule that you picked up here. You want to keep this schedule because we try to stay to this as closely as possible, but sometimes we have to make changes because certain topics are harder than others, and we might have to spend more time on explaining a certain topic, and so we have to adjust along the way. But typically, we stay pretty close to this. Now, it's a little bit unfortunate that you guys have class on Monday, because we end up losing 3 classes, okay? And that's actually quite a bit, right? We lost one for Labor Day. We will have another holiday on the 30th, and then another one on Thanksgiving. So what happens is, to catch up, I've added like a special catch-up day for Friday, September 27th. Do you guys have class on Friday? Anybody? Yeah, in the morning, is that? Yeah, okay. So I know it's less than ideal, but that's the only way for us to be able to finish everything, right? So I'll do a online class. We'll do it over Zoom. And if you have class and you cannot come to the online session, that's okay. I'll record everything, and then you can just watch it on your own time, okay? But please do plan for that. That's going to be Friday, September 27th, 8:30 a.m. in the morning, okay? I will be sending you the information about how to attend the online class later on. Yeah, basically, it's just a link, right? You just click on it, and you show up. That's all you have to do, okay? So we will have our first quiz on September 18th. And again, right, because of the lost time from all the Monday holidays, our second quiz is going to have to be done online as well. Okay, everything else is going to be done in person, but for quiz number 2, it's going to be done through eCentennial. Okay. Now, also, it's important to note when the lab days are. So over here, we have our first lab, October 7th. You have to be physically in class in order to do the lab. Try not to miss the lab. It's really hard to, make up for it. You'll be doing it on your own, and here, I'll just take it. Okay. So if anyone missed the attendance, you can just do it later, okay? Yeah, I'll tell you more about the lab later when we get closer to the lab days. But that's pretty much it in terms of the schedule. Any questions? Fantastic. Yes, please. Yeah.
I can't attend it.
That's okay. So I will record the whole thing, and then I'll post it online, and then you can watch it afterwards. It's not a...
Or I can attend it automatically attendant, right?
Oh yeah, the attendance is fine. Yeah, don't worry about it. Okay, like I'm not, you know, you guys show up, you know, here because you pay a lot of money, right? So like attendance is your onus, not mine. If you don't show up, it's not gonna affect your grade. That's what I mean. Okay, but do show up. Right? If you show up, you learn, you will tend to do better. Okay, but obviously, that's something that you're going to decide for yourself. Okay. For the eCentennial webpage, have you guys had a chance to look at that? Hands up if you have. Yeah. Okay, some of you, great. That is where you will find everything for the course. Okay. I don't know about other courses, but for my course, everything you need is already uploaded. Right. So if you have time this week before things get really busy, maybe go download all the notes for the whole course and just have it in a binder or something, right? So once you get onto the course homepage, you will see there is a news session. This is where I post announcement for you about upcoming quizzes, about you know, where to find notes and things like that. So please check on that regularly. Sometimes there will be like links that you can click on and it will take you directly to the file I am referring to. Okay, so this is all this information was in the email that I sent you, right? There are no textbook, okay, which is good, you know, save a little bit of money. There is an online textbook that you can use as reference, right? But that's just for reference only, right? The online textbook has information that we don't cover in class, and you are therefore not responsible for those extra information. Okay, everything that I will test you on will only be based on the PowerPoint slides as well as the study guide, right, which I'll get to in a second. So here's my email again if you need to contact me. So if you go to content, we go to content. Let me switch to student view so it looks exactly same as yours. If you go to content, you will see that there are a few folders here. There's the lecture folder, some useful information, study guide answers, and class notes. So study guide answers are blank. It's blank right now because I want you to try it on your own first before I give you the answer. Class notes I'll post whenever we write some notes. Okay, so in addition to the PowerPoint slides, we'll be writing quite a bit of notes, like in the this is called OneNote, okay, on the OneNote, and then I'll post it online for you afterwards as well. And you will be able to find them in the class note section. Okay. When you go to lecture, you can see that's all the lectures that you will be doing. So again, lecture 1 to 5, that's for the first half, and then 6 to 10 is for the second half. So today we'll be doing scientific method. And then if you click on the lecture notes, you will see the PowerPoint slides. So for those of you who are, you know, taking notes on a computer, maybe that's suitable for you. There is the same thing, but 6 slides per page is pretty much what I print for you. It's just cheaper to print that one if you need to bring it to class. And then there is also the study guide, which you should bring with you to class. So this is the study guide that you picked up. The study guide is very important, okay? I cannot stress the importance of doing the study guide. Sometimes I just take questions directly from the study guide and put it on the quiz, right? So make sure you take the time to go through it. And like I said, I will post the answer to the study guides later on, okay? But this is your main studying tool. There's some handouts over there. Handouts, yeah. Okay, so there's no need to go search up, you know, things on the internet to study from. The tests, like I said, and the quizzes are just based on the PowerPoint slides and the study guide. And they're really straightforward. As long as you study, you should be okay. There are some additional studying resources for you. Each lecture will have a link to the online textbook, to the relevant section. So today we'll be learning about scientific method. And if you click on this, let me see what's going to happen. Wi-Fi is not really good here. But yeah, that's the online textbook. Okay, so some people, like I said, the PowerPoint should be pretty detailed already. But if you want to read some more, if you want to have some extra background information, there's the link to the online textbook. Okay, once again, you're not responsible for extra content from the online textbook. There's some video resources as well for you. Sometimes it just is, beneficial to hear things being explained by a different person. So I, go on YouTube and found all these relevant information, relevant videos for you to watch. Some of them are pretty good. Some of them goes beyond the scope of what you have to know. So same thing goes with the videos. If you hear something that we didn't learn about, you're not responsible for it. Okay, so a lot of people get really confused about dependent variable, independent variable, and controlled variables. So, there is a video that explains that. So rather than, you having to look through the internet and see what kind of resources are out there, I just put it all in the same place for you. Okay. Let me just go back here. So textbook, video resources. There are some crosswords as well. So crosswords are really good for learning the vocabularies, right? So for example here, yeah, it's a biology. No.
So like this is the B204, right?
Which version? B204. Yes, but that this is not the right class. You should go to the transportation office. Oh, let's see. Yeah,
Okay,
this is all of it. Yeah. Biology. Yeah, okay. There are handouts over there. There are some handouts over there. Yeah. Handouts. Okay, so for example, right here, right, a sham treatment. Does anybody know the answer? What is a sham treatment in one word? That's okay. We'll learn that. Okay, and if you're not sure, you can click solve, and then it will tell you it's a placebo. Okay, so great way to learn the vocabularies so you can use them, during the test. There are some self quizzes that you can try. It is a good way to assess how much you know. Right? A little word of warning: the self quiz is not representative of the actual quiz. Some people do very well in the self quiz and they're like, I don't have to study, I got this. And then they turn out doing quite poorly on the quiz, okay? This is just very basic things to see where you're at, okay? And if you do well on those, great, but you gotta study more. Now, as I told you, we're gonna be doing the second quiz online. So when you do online assessment, there is something called Lockdown Browser that you have to install. So you can use this self-quiz here to install that to see what it looks like, so that you're not going to be setting it up for the first time when you do the quiz. So when you click on it, there's some standard information here, and then at the bottom it will say download and install the latest version of Lockdown Browser. So you should do that sometime this week or next week. Okay, I'll post a note on the news item to remind you. Basically, what the Lockdown Browser does is it locks down your browser, so you cannot browse the internet, you cannot access the files on your computers while you are doing the quiz. Okay, you will still have access to your physical notes. That's fine. Okay, like that's hi, biology. Yeah, okay. There are some handouts over here. Okay. It's okay for quiz number 2. I am okay for you to have the notes in front of you. Okay, you don't have to, put them away or anything like that. Okay. The questions that I give you already take that into consideration. Right. So, that's totally fine. But you do need to install the Lockdown Browser. Okay, back to study resources. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, sometimes I will post extra things for topics that are particularly difficult. So when you go to lecture 2, you will see the exact same format. Okay, the PowerPoint slides, the printout, and then the study guide, and then the study resources. So today I print the notes for you, right? But starting next week, you will have to print your own. Okay? You have to print the notes to come to class. It's just not very easy to follow without the notes. Okay, so in fact, I would encourage you to print out everything, put it in a binder. That way, you don't have to worry about it. Okay. So for those of you who just came in, the session is being recorded. I'll post it online after, so you can watch whatever you've missed. I think that's pretty much it. That's everything I wanted to tell you before the lesson. Do you guys have any questions? No, you guys are awfully quiet. Any questions before we start the lesson? The real things? Yeah. Okay. So I don't know what your education background is. Some of you might have taken biology before. Some of you might be doing it for the first time. So I will start at the very basic level, and then we will build upon it. Okay. Well, I'll assume everybody, doesn't have any biology background. If I'm going too fast, just let me know. I have the caption here as well. Am I blocking the caption? Here, I'll just put it on the top left or something. Some people find it helpful to have the caption, if they cannot follow what I'm saying. All right, so here we go. First lecture, it is scientific method. Now, this lecture is actually, it doesn't feel like it's biology for a lot of people. It's more about how science is done in general, okay? And you really need to have a good understanding of this lecture in order to do well on your first lab. And your first lab is going to be the beetroot permeability lab, where you will be conducting an experiment and you will be, making observations, analyzing data, and then drawing a valid conclusion based on your data. And all that requires you to use the scientific methods. Okay, so make sure you have good understanding of this. So here we go. This is biology. So let's start with the definition of what biology is. Right? So biology is the scientific study of living things. Scientific study of living things. And there are actually many different subdivision or disciplines within biology. For example, we have anatomy. Okay? So anatomy is the study of body structures. Basically, anatomy is what is it called? Okay, so like it's called the heart. Inside the heart, we have these valves. Okay, it's called the lungs, and inside the lungs, we have these air pockets called alveoli. So learning all the names of the various body structure, that is anatomy, which is a branch of biology. Physiology, on the other hand, is the study of the functions of the structures in the body. So physiology is what does it do? Okay, so we know that there are valves in the heart. What is their function? Right? We know there are these air sacs in the lungs. What do they do? Right? What happens if something malfunctions, right? So anatomy and physiology often goes hand in hand in the same course. And that's what you will be doing next semester. Okay, next semester, there is a course called Anatomy and Physiology, GS 215. I also teach that, so maybe you'll be in my class again. I don't know. And then there's histology. Histology is the study of cells and tissues. Okay? Cells are basically the basic unit that builds up an organism. Okay, our whole body is made up of trillions of cells. Okay, a dog is made up of cells. A tree is made up of cells. So living things are made up of cells. So when we study these cells, when we study tissues would be like a group of cells, basically. That's called histology. Okay? Histology is very important in healthcare. When someone has like a tumor, for example, and they need to take a biopsy, a sample, right? They stain the cells and then they look at it. They look at the histology of the tumor to determine whether it is cancerous or not. Okay, so here is a picture of something, and they stain it purple. So studying a slide like this, that's an example of histology. Just wild guess here. What do you think this is? What organ do you think this is taken from? Any guess is fine. You can just yell them out. It's okay to be wrong. Yeah. Is it the brain? Okay, that's a good guess. Yeah, brain. Anyone else? The lungs. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like who knows, right? Like how are we supposed to guess, right? That's okay. After you take next semester, you see this slide, you'll be like, oh, that's totally the kidney. Okay. But that's next semester, and that's histology. Okay. And that's either something to look forward to or something to be like, oh no, maybe maybe I should switch program, right? But don't worry, it's quite easy. Okay, once you understand what to look for, things like that. So anatomy, physiology, histology you will do in the next semester. Genetics is actually the most fun, and we'll do it this semester. Okay, towards the end, around lecture 8, we will do genetics, which talks about heredity. Okay, so for example, some of us have earlobes that are like dangling, like mine, and some people have earlobes that are attached. Okay, so if you have attached earlobes and your spouse have dangling earlobes, what's the probability? What's the chance that your child is going to have dangling earlobes? Okay, so we're going to be doing questions like that, right? What if you have brown eyes and your spouse have brown eyes, but your kid turned out to have blue eyes? Like how did that happen, right? It's not normal, right? Did somebody cheat, right? So we're going to be looking at genetics later on in the course. So many branches within biology. So the definition, right, of biology, it's the scientific study of living things. So we probably should take a closer look at how we define living things. What are living things, right? Well, it's pretty straightforward. I'm sure if I give you a bunch of things like that, and then I ask you to sort them into living and non-living, you would have no trouble doing that, right? A zebra is, of course, for biology. Okay, great. There are some handouts over here. So zebra is alive, frog is alive, teddy bear is not, doll is not, right? It's pretty easy for us to sort things into one category versus the other. Now, do we have some common features that are shared by all living things? Like any characteristics? Without looking ahead in the notes, can you give me some ideas of some features that are shared by all living things? Okay, yeah, so they have cells. That's good. Have cells. Anyone else? How do you know something is living? Like, what do you use to assess whether it's living or not? What do you look for? What's that? Food. Okay, they need food. Anything else? Yes. Reproduction. Very good. They reproduce, right? Okay, so there are some common themes that we can apply to all living things, right? Like the teddy bear does not have any of these, so I know it's not alive. Okay? But sometimes it's a little bit how to say it? It's not so clear cut. Okay. For example, we instead of saying need food, one can say living things needs energy, right? Because if you think about a plant they don't eat, right? But they need energy from the sun, right? So requirement of an energy is a characteristic of living things. But then if you think about a car also needs gasoline, right? As energy, right? So we cannot use a single category to decide whether something is living or non-living. In fact, we have to use a whole list of characteristics, a whole list of features to assess whether something is living or not. Okay, so another thing I want you to know is that in science, often we try to put things into categories to help organize concepts and whatnot. But a lot of times there are examples where it doesn't quite fit in one category or the other. It's somewhere in between. Anybody know what this purple ball is? What do you think this is? Okay, that's a good try. Yeah, it's a virus. That's right. Do you guys think virus is alive or not? Living thing or not living? Living, yeah. Well, scientists actually don't know how to classify them. Okay, they are somewhere between the land of the living and the non-living. Okay, because viruses can only reproduce. Viruses can only make more copies of themselves if they infect a living organism. Okay, so if you have some flu virus floating around in the air, that's just it. They cannot make more copies of themselves. Only after they infect a person, then they can make more copies of themselves. Okay, so they have the potential to reproduce, but they cannot do it on their own, which is why it doesn't quite fit all the characteristic of living things. So most scientists consider virus as somewhere in between. Okay. Again, just stop me if you have questions, okay? If you have a question, probably other people are thinking the same thing. So what we're gonna be doing in the next 15, 20 minutes is to go through 7 characteristics that are associated with living things. Okay? Living things takes many different shapes and form. And here we have 3 very different looking animals, right? That's a poison dart frog. You might have seen that at the zoo or something. It's poisonous. The skin keeps on secreting poisonous material. Anybody know what this is? It's a jellyfish, right? Okay, but it's a very special kind. It's actually called the Portuguese man of war. If you get stung by one of these things, I was told, it's going to be very, very, very painful. And you need to go to the hospital. Anybody seen this at like the aquarium maybe? Before now? Okay, this is called the oxalotl. It's kind of like a salamander kind of thing. It's actually a lot of people like to have them as pets, but in Canada, many provinces, it's illegal to have one of these as pets. It's because not because they're endangered actually, but because sometimes people they don't want their pets anymore, and they decided to free them into the wild or something. And what happens is if you free them into the wild, they actually become invasive species. Okay, they just reproduce so quickly and they take over the local ecosystem, right? And for that reason, it's actually illegal to have one of these things. But they are so cute. Like they look like they're smiling all the time. They actually have it at the downtown aquarium, the Ripley, right? Ripley Aquarium, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about characteristics of living things. First of all, living things tends to have order and complexity associated with them. Okay, so if you look at a butterfly, if you look at us, we have symmetry, right? We have left-right symmetry. Okay? If you look at a seashell, you can see very beautiful geometry associated with the spiral. Okay, you can see symmetry in plants, and that complexity and symmetry, it's not just something that exists on the surface. Right? If you go down onto the cellular level, you will continue to see these order and complexity. So this picture over here at the bottom right, that is actually a plant. Okay, if you look at the cells of a plant, and this is actually a vessel of the plant, and you can see it's very well organized. Things are not random. There are, again, complexity associated with its structure. So that is one of the characteristics of living things. Now, talking about the order and the complexity, it's important to understand how living things are built from the most basic fundamental level. Okay, so a lot of times you will see a picture like this when we talk about order. Okay? It's called the hierarchy of organization. So everything in the universe are made up of elements. Yeah, you probably will learn that in chemistry, and we'll learn that next week as well. And these elements are made up of atoms. Okay? Think of atoms as little building blocks that we can use to build anything. Okay, the table is made up of atoms. The air we breathe is made up of atoms. You and I are made up of atoms. So an example of an atom that makes us that makes up us, makes up humans, would be like carbon. Okay, so we have carbon atoms in us. Any other examples that you might be able to think of? What else are we made up of besides carbon? What's that? Okay, so we have water, but it turns out we're going to get back to that. Water is a molecule, and I'll tell you what the difference is. Anything else? Again, nothing obscure. Just think about, like what are you breathing in right now? Yeah, so we are made up of carbon. We are made up of oxygen. What else are you breathing in? Do you know what's in the air mostly? Nitrogen, that's right, nitrogen. Okay, so we are made up of these atoms. Okay, you don't have to memorize it now. Okay, we'll have a lecture on those things later on. I'm just giving you like a preview, right? So that atoms can come together to form molecules, right? And then, you talk about water. So water is a molecule that's important for living things. Does anybody know the chemical formula for water? That's right, H2O. So water is made up of 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen, right? So it's a really small molecule. It only has 3 atoms in it. Does anybody have another example of a molecule that's important in the body? Anything at all? Yeah, so there's carbon dioxide. Okay, which is like CO2. And then there's also like glucose. Okay, glucose is C6H12O6. Again, you don't have to memorize it yet. Okay, but these are some of the things we're going to be learning as we move through the course. Okay, so water is only 3 atoms, quite small. Glucose is 24 atoms, right? 6 carbon, 12 hydrogen, 6 oxygen. There we go, 6 plus 6 is 12, 12 plus 12 is 24, right? So it gets a little bit bigger, right? Okay. But even though it's bigger than water, it's actually still quite small, right? In our body, a lot of the molecules are considered as macromolecules. Macro, we are talking about thousands of atoms. Okay, so 24 is still very small compared to thousands. So some of the important macromolecules that we have in the body include proteins. Okay. Oh, by the way, these things that I'm writing, once the class is finished, is gone. There's no way for me to preserve them, okay? So copy them down if you can. If you miss some of it, again, you can just watch the recordings afterwards. What else besides protein? Do you think it's a big molecule in the body?
Carbohydrate.
That's right, there's carbohydrates. And maybe one more. What do people call the blueprint of life? Like what makes you who you are? Like inside your cell, there's this 3-letter acronym. Okay, yeah, there's fat actually is it's a macromolecule. Good, and I heard it. What was it again? I thought I heard DNA. Okay, I'll assume I did. Okay. So DNA, right? DNA is the blueprint of life, right? It makes you who you are. It gives you instruction. It gives yourself instruction of what to do, right? The DNA is what makes your hair blonde, brown, black, right? It gives you all the features that you have. Okay, so all these are macromolecules. They are thousands of atoms big. Okay. So from atoms, we can make molecules. We can even make bigger molecules called macromolecules. And then we will have organelles, which are like tiny organs that are inside the cell. Okay? And of course, we're made up of trillions of cells. And cells can come together to form tissues. Tissues are like connective tissues, fat tissues, and so on and so forth. Different types of tissues can come together to make organ. So give me an organ. Just yell it out, anyone. Kidney, right? So kidney is part of your urinary system, right? So multiple organs can form an organ system, okay? The stomach is part of the digestive system, right? So multiple organ system makes up the organism. All right. So in biology, we will be learning about atoms, molecules, and macromolecules in lecture 2. And then for the rest of the course, we'll be learning everything there is to learn about the cell. And then last lecture, lecture 10, if we make it that far, we'll be learning about tissue. Okay. Next semester, anatomy and physiology, we'll be doing organs and organ systems. Okay. So by the time you finish the program, we would have ascended the hierarchy of organization. Are you guys okay? Do you have another class in the afternoon? Okay, yeah, so pace yourself, okay? Yeah, I know there's a lot of information, but yeah, I have another class too, if that makes you feel better. All right. In case you forgot, we are talking about the characteristics of living things. And so they have order, and that order is maintained all the way down to the molecular level. The second characteristics of living things is the ability to maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis. This means internal balance. Our environment changes all the time. It gets cold, it gets hot, right? And so our body tries to maintain some sort of stability, some sort of internal balance inside the body, despite the changes that are going on. Okay, so what body temperature do we maintain in Celsius? Anybody know? That's Fahrenheit, yeah. But what about Celsius? 37, okay, 37, okay? 37 degrees Celsius, okay? So that's the normal body temperature, right? If it's 38 or 39, then you have a fever, exactly, okay? So even though it's minus 20 outside, your core temperature is going to stay at 37 degrees Celsius, okay? Even if it's 40 degrees, you will still be at 37 degrees Celsius. But body temperature is not the only homeostasis that we need to maintain. There are many things we need to maintain inside our body. For example, when you eat food, your blood sugar level goes up, right? And you would have to secrete insulin, right, to bring it back down. People, what kind of disease is associated with lack of insulin? Exactly, right? People who have diabetes, type 1 diabetes, they cannot make their own insulin, right? So they fail to maintain homeostasis. Right? So there are many different kinds of internal balance. And much of these balances are going to be maintained automatically. You don't have to think about it, right? Every time you eat a sandwich, you don't have to be like, oh, I better secrete some insulin, right? Like your body does it automatically for you. Right? So when things happen automatically without conscious input, we call them physiological mechanism. Okay, physiological mechanism. Physiological means the body does it for you. Mechanism is just like, methods, right? Methods. Like ways of doing it. So let's talk about some physiological mechanisms to cool off when it's too hot. Let's say it's 40 degrees outside. You are waiting to pick up your kids, okay? It's super hot. What are some physiological mechanisms to cool you down? That's right, your body automatically sweats for you, right? And sweating is gonna help cool you off. Okay. What if it's really, really cold? Okay. Minus 20 with the wind chill of minus 30, you're waiting for your bus. At the bus stop, how does your body warm you up automatically? Shivering. Yeah, you're gonna be shivering a little bit, right? What about the veins? If you look at the veins in your arms, what happens to them if it's really cold?
It's small.
It gets smaller, right? It buries themselves, right? When it's hot, it's very prominent. It's almost like protruding a little bit, right? Okay. So all these are physiological mechanisms. Your body does it for you automatically. Okay. Behavioral is things that you learn to do in certain situations. And so if it's really cold, what can you do to stay warm? Yeah, you put on a jacket, you wear a coat, right? Okay, if it's really hot, you turn on the fan, right? You take a cold shower, okay? You drink something cold, right? So all those things are behavioral. Do we understand the difference? Okay, so on the quiz, I may ask you, right, which of the following is an example of a physiological mechanism, okay? Or which of the following is an example of a behavioral? So lizard, over here, they're not like us. They are cold-blooded. Okay? We are warm-blooded. Warm-blooded means you can maintain a stable core body temperature, but the lizard cannot do that. Okay, lizard, the body temperature fluctuates with the surrounding. So the only way for them to stay warm is actually to, take a sun bath. Right, so they would go up to a rock and they would bathe in the sun to keep warm. Do you think that's physiological or behavioral? Yeah, behavioral, right? Like I would think that the lizard deliberately get on the rock, right? Okay, it's a behavior. It's something that they do, right? Okay, same thing with the dog panting, right? Sticking the tongue out when it's really hot. Right? It's a behavioral mechanism to cope with the heat. Right? When the saliva evaporates from the tongue, it cools them off. When you cut your finger, it's small cut, paper cut, or something like that. Even if you don't do anything to it, it's gonna stop bleeding, right? On its own. Physiological or behavioral? Exactly. So we talk about order. We talk about ability to maintain homeostasis. Let's take a look at the third characteristic. 2 down, okay? 5 to go. Growth and development. So all living things are able to grow throughout their lifetime and to develop. Some organisms experience drastic changes to how they look as they grow, such as the butterfly, right? They were caterpillar before, and then they become a butterfly. The adult form looks very different from the juvenile form. For humans, we got bigger, right? And we might have features that we didn't have when we were born, like a beard or something like that. But for the most part, we look very similar to our baby form, right? Okay? Like we have 2 arms and 2 legs and so on and so forth. Yeah. So some organisms grow and develop in a very similar way. Others undergo drastic changes. But regardless, if it's a living thing, it's going to grow and it's going to develop. It's going to change a little bit throughout the course of its lifetime. And we talk about the need for energy, the requirement to get food. If you're talking about an animal, plants make their own food by doing photosynthesis. You might have heard of that. But either way, okay, the food source is ultimately traced back to the sun. So when we eat beef or something, okay, so the beef is from the cow, and the cow eats the grass, and the grass gets the energy from the sun, right? So without the sun, there's no life form, people say. Everything, all the food energy ultimately traces back to the sun. Okay? So order, homeostasis, growth and development, requirement for energy. Next, we have respond to stimuli. Okay? So stimuli is the plural. The singular is stimulus. So basically, stimulus is like a trigger in the environment, some kind of changes. Right? So actually, the ability to respond to stimulus is related to the ability to maintain homeostasis. Some stimuli is going to trigger a certain kind of physiological changes to help you maintain homeostasis. Okay? Say again, if it's really hot, that's a stimulus, right? And then your body will sweat to help you maintain homeostasis. That's a Venus flytrap right there. It's they call it like a carnivorous plant. Basically, can I hide this thing actually? So the plant opens up normally, and then when the fly goes in, it closes and it basically eats the fly, right? For the nitrogen. So the landing of the fly, it's a trigger, it's a stimulus, and they're able to respond by closing. Okay, so all organism is able to respond to changes in the environment. We have reflexes. If you touch on something sharp, right, your hand automatically recoils, right? That's an example of ability to respond to a stimulus as well. So on the study guide, right, like the first question, if you hadn't noticed, it asks you what are the 7 characteristics, right? So, you can fill them in as we go, or you can do that on your own time. Okay, next one is the ability to reproduce. I think someone mentioned this earlier today. All organisms are able to reproduce their own kind, although the way of reproduction are different for different organisms. Okay, if you talk about animals, most animals reproduce sexually, right? As opposed to asexually. Okay, sexual reproduction means there are 2 partners that are needed, and then each half would contribute the same amount of genetic material, and then it creates the offspring. Asexual reproduction is common for plants, okay, for bacteria. They are able to reproduce on their own. They don't need a partner, okay? Some of you might have plants at home. You can literally cut off a branch and give it to a friend, and they can grow it, right? Like it's very common for like those succulent plants, right? Okay, so reproduce their own kind. And finally, the last characteristic of living things that we're going to talk about is the ability to adapt and evolve, right? So to adapt means to have a better chance of surviving or reproducing in a particular environment. Okay, so more adaptable, enhanced survival and or reproduction. So evolution is a really big topic, can spend a whole course on it, but in a nutshell, it basically means that some traits, some characteristics, some features are gonna allow the animals, the organism to survive better or to have more offspring in a given environment. And therefore, if they're able to survive longer, or if they're able to reproduce more, those traits would get passed on to the next generation. And over time, the population will have that favorable trait. Let me try to explain to you with an example. So we have a hummingbird here, right? And you can see the beak is really, really long. And the reason that it needs to have a long beak is because the flower that it gets the nectar from has really deep pouch. I don't know what it's called. I just call it the pouch, okay? So if the beak is not long enough, they're not going to be able to suck the nectar from the bottom of the plant, right? Okay, and they starve. So in the hummingbird population, imagine there are birds with different beak length. Some have longer ones, some have shorter ones, some have medium ones, okay? The ones that are going to be thriving, the ones that are going to be surviving better are the ones that have the long beak. So they get more food, which means they would be able to be stronger and reproduce more, and they pass on that trait to the next generation. On the other hand, the ones with the shorter beak, they might die off and not have as many offspring, right? So over time, the population of the hummingbird will consist of these long beak versions. And that essentially is evolution, okay? So it's important to understand individuals do not evolve. Population does. Right? Now, a lot of people view evolution as this abstract thing that doesn't really apply to our daily lives, but actually that would be incorrect. Before I talk about that, here's another example. You guys see the seahorse right here, right? Like in the middle. Okay. So the seahorse is blended into the background, right? It's gonna enhance its survival rate. So how did that happen? Well, in the past, maybe the seahorse population has the pink one, and then maybe it has the blue one. And the blue one is not going to be able to blend in, right? So they get eaten more often. They don't reproduce as much. And over time, the population will shift towards the pink one. Okay, the population evolve. So how does this, what does this have anything to do with our daily lives? Well, the pandemic, right? During the pandemic, we had the COVID-19 virus, and every now and then you would hear the news say there is like a new variant of concern, right? Remember when the Omicron came out, right? People were very concerned about it because it was more virulent, it passed on more easily. And that basically is evolution, right, for the virus. So let's say the virus population has different variants because of mutations, something that we'll learn later. When we get the vaccine, we are protected against a particular strain of the virus. So there are certain kind of viruses, if they have the ability to evade the vaccine, those are the ones that are able to infect people and make more copies of themselves. And over time, the whole population will be replaced with that new variant of the virus. And essentially, that is evolution. Okay, so evolution doesn't just apply to big animals. It's something that happens with bacteria. It's something that happens with viruses as well. And we're going to learn more about it as we progress through the course. And there you have it. Those are the 7 characteristics of living things. Do you guys have any questions? Okay, so that was a lot of talking. Let's take a 5-minute break, and we'll do more afterwards. Here's an attendance sheet if you missed it. Just check your name off, and then if you have a preferred name, you can put it in the third column. We will resume in 5 minutes, okay? Yeah, 100%, please. All right, let's keep going, guys. So I want to remind you, this tends to be a problem for some students. If you look at your schedule, you can see that Monday has no classes, right? But that's not true because it was Labor Day. That's why nothing shows up. If you click on next week, then you will see that you might actually have classes. For example, like I know for a fact you will have class with me on Monday morning, right? Okay, so make sure you click the next week to see your full schedule. Right? Sometimes you might have courses that are like DLO. DLO means online, right? So you will be doing them virtually. Okay. All right, let's keep going. So we were talking about living things, which is like the second half of the definition. And now we're gonna focus on the other part of the definition, which is the scientific study. Okay, scientific study. What is science? The word science is derived from Latin. A lot of the science word is rooted in Latin because that's the language it was first written in. And it means to know. Science is to know. And it's a way that's based on inquiry, based on our curiosity of asking questions for the things that are happening around us. Okay, humans are by nature curious. Maybe we are less curious now than when we were kids, but nevertheless, we are curious. Okay, if you hear like a clicking sound in the middle of the night, you're curious to find out where the clicking sound is coming from, right? Okay, you're gonna find out why it's clicking, right? All these things, all these questioning. That's essentially what science is based on. There are 2 main scientific approaches that are used in science. One way is discovery science, and the other is called hypothesis-driven science. We don't have time to do number 2 today, but we will finish discovery science. Discovery science is basically just making observations. Right? You're not changing anything. You are not, manipulating the system. You are just observing. Okay, so people can use discovery science to observe global warming. Right? What's the effect of global warming? Right? We see more disaster now, natural disasters, right? We see that the ice caps are melting. So all these things are observations that we are making. Another example of discovery science is in astronomy. Okay? You are observing a distant galaxy. There is no way for us to manipulate it or change it, right? We are just observers. We're just looking at it. Okay? Or if you discover a new species of animals, you are observing it. You're watching it. Don't touch it. Don't poke it. Just observing. When we do observations, there are two kinds of observations that you can make. We have qualitative or quantitative. You have to understand these two things for your lab, okay? And for the quiz too, okay? But more importantly for the lab. So let's start with qualitative observations. The word qualitative, you can think of it as related to quality. If you buy a shirt, how do you know it's good quality or not? What's the first thing you're gonna do when you want to buy a shirt? Huh? The brand maybe, yeah. And anything else? Yeah, how it feels, right? You're gonna touch it, right? Okay. So qualitative involves examining things with our senses. Okay, touch is not the only sense, right? Okay, we have ability to see, to smell, and so on and so forth. So that's what qualitative is. It's making observations with our senses. Now, our senses can be a little bit limited as human beings. Our eyes can see very small things, so we can use tools to extend our senses. We can use microscope to see smaller things. We can use telescope to see really far. Right? So we can use various instruments to broaden our senses to make more in-depth observations, if you would. So I'm gonna take a note here with you on qualitative observations. Qualitative observations. So let's start with the things that we can see. Sight. And that's one of our five senses, right? So if you're looking at something, what are some things that you can observe? Like if you're observing my phone, okay, like what are some of the things you can the color, that's right. Anything else? Huh? Objects, meaning like what it is, you mean? Okay, so the nature of the sample, we'll say. Someone else said something? The size. Okay, so give me some examples of size. How are you gonna describe the size? Okay, so shape, yeah. Okay, shape. Now, when we say size, though, we can use. Give me some description of size, guys. Like, what words do you use to describe size? Yeah, small, big, right? Okay. If you say small or big, that's qualitative. But as soon as you start to use numbers, like it's a 10-inch screen or something like that, as soon as you use numbers, then that's quantitative. Okay, remember, qualitative is just using our senses, no numbers, okay? So size, e.g., example, big or small, okay? No numbers. No numbers. Okay, so that's good. Give me another sense besides sight. What other sense do you have?
Smell.
Smell, sure. Okay, so I'm not gonna ask you to smell my phone, but let's say we talk about like a lemon or something. Okay, what kind of smell are we gonna use to describe the lemon?
Citrus.
Yeah, citrus. It smells like, citrus. Smells like citrusy. I don't know if that's a word. Smells sour. Okay, anything else? Think about shampoo. How do you describe the smell of shampoo or the smell of anything? Okay, just give me some description. Sure, it smells fresh. Floral, I think you say. Anything else?
Minty.
Minty. You guys are very nice. My class yesterday, all the description they gave me are like bad smells, like rancid, foul, right? Anything else? Maybe one more. If it's really strong, what do people say? What word do they use? It's very starts with a P. Yeah, pungent. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so if you're smelling things in chemistry class, especially, I'm sure your teacher will tell you that you don't take a big sniff, right? Okay, in case it's really, really pungent, right? You do a waft, right? Waft test. Okay, another sense, please.
Feel.
Yeah, touch, right? So how would you describe what you're touching? What are some words we can use to describe texture?
Rough versus
Yeah, rough, soft. Anything else?
cold.
Cold, yeah, okay, good. So the temperature of it. Again, be careful. We are just saying whether it's cold, warm, hot, right? Burning hot. We're not giving it a specific temperature. Okay, not like 27 or something like that. Sharp, right? Dull. Maybe one more. Like in the morning, you touch the outside of a window or something. How would you describe that? Wet, maybe, right? Okay, yeah, condensation, right? Okay, so that's some description with touch. Another one, please. Another taste. Yeah. So you should not be tasting anything in the lab unless you are instructed to do so. But we can taste things that are like salty, right? What else? Sweet, yeah. Okay, I heard spicy. Technically, spicy is not a taste, but we'll put it here, spicy. What else? Bitter, yeah, like coffee, Brussels sprouts. Maybe one more. Sour, yeah. There's actually a fifth taste that a lot of people are not aware of. It's called umami. You actually have a taste bud for umami, which is yummy in Japanese. So when you eat things that are savory, like potato chips, instant noodle, meat, your umami receptors are going to be activated. Okay. So that's taste. Last one. Yeah, that's right. Hearing. Okay. Here, we'll just say here. Hearing. Auditory. Right? Now, hearing is we don't really use that too much in the context of what we're doing. But if you are observing like a new animal or something, or even like if you observe an animal that people know about, right? Then you might use hearing. You're like, oh, what's the mating call of this bird, right? What does it sound like when it's in distress or something like that, right? So there's a lot of description. So for example, like high pitch, right? If you're in chemistry, you might use the description. There's a popping sound, when you do the flame test for hydrogen or something like that. So these are qualitative observations because you do not use numbers, okay? We good? All right, so I'm going to show you a picture here. And, oops, this card. Now, it's better you don't assume you know what you're looking at, okay? Just give me some qualitative observations of whatever this is you're looking at.
Larva.
What's that?
Larva.
Again, we're not trying to see what this is, okay?
Oh.
Yeah, so we're just trying to describe it using, these are qualitative terms. What words would you use? What's that? They are white, okay? Anybody would use a different color maybe? Or gray, okay. Anything else? Oval, yeah. What's that?
Rough.
Rough, yeah. Does anybody not think this is rough? Soft? Okay, now it's hard to tell, right? You look at this like, let's poke at it, right? Like it's hard to tell from a picture, but I get it, right? Like if you were able to touch it, you would be able to tell me if it's soft or not, right? Okay. Everybody think this thing looks rough? Yeah, everyone thought it was smooth yesterday, you know? And that's the point that I'm trying to make. Right? When we use qualitative observations, it's very subjective, okay? It depends on the person, right? Some things are not as subjective, like all of you would agree, I hope, that this is grayscale, right? There's no color to it. But other things are very subjective, rough or smooth, right? It depends on your perception. Even if you can physically touch it, some people might think certain things are smoother than others, right? When it comes to things like smell, it's very subjective, right? What you think smells nice might not smell very nice to another person, right? Like every time we walk by that, is it called Body Works store? You know, the store that sells Body Works, right? Like I get headaches, like I had to hold my breath. But my kids love it. They're like, oh, this smells so good, right? It's very subjective, right? So we try not to use qualitative observations too much. They are useful in certain contexts, but in some cases, it's more appropriate to use quantitative observations. Okay, so let's take a quick note here on quantitative observations. Quantitative observation. These are using measurements and numbers. Okay, so we can talk about length, width, height, right? Basically dimensions. And we can measure it in centimeter. We can measure it in kilometers. It depends on what you're measuring. Okay? If you're measuring the phone, it makes sense to use centimeters or inches. It wouldn't make sense to use something really big like kilometers, right? If you're measuring distance from Toronto to whatever, Scarborough, okay? Actually, Scarborough is part of Toronto. Toronto to Niagara, right? Then you would use kilometers. Right? If you're measuring bacteria, then we would use micrometer. So different units for different purposes. What else can we measure besides length, width, height? Volume, I heard. Yeah, that's good. Right. Mass, yeah. Volume would be like milliliters, ounce, right? Quarts. Mass would be kilograms, pounds, also ounce. Anything else? Maybe one or two more. If you combine mass and volume, what quantity do you get? Does anybody know? Density, right? Density. So like you put oil and water together, which one goes on top? The oil goes on top, right? Oil is less dense compared to water. Okay. So density is mass over volume. pH, you might know that. pH is a measurement of something that's acidic or basic. Right? In any case, these are measurements. They have numbers. So on the quiz, if I give you a bunch of observations and I ask you which one is qualitative, which one is quantitative, you should be able to do them, okay? If I give you a picture and I ask you to describe it using one or the other, you should also be able to do that. Any questions? Sorry, am I moving away? Okay. So this is when you look at bacteria under a microscope, a certain kind of bacteria, doesn't matter. And usually when you take a picture under the microscope, you include a scale. You include a line that tells people how long that line is. So this particular white line is 10 micrometer. It's a fancy U, okay? It's called micrometer. You will learn this later on in math. 1 meter is 10 to the 6 micrometer. It's a million micrometer. Okay. So this line here is 10 micrometer. Now, having a reference will allow you to have an idea of how long some of these things are. So let's say this guy over here, right? This one is about 2. You can fit 2 of these things over here. And so if this white line is 10, how long do you think this thing is?
5.
Yeah, 5, right? Okay, makes sense. So it's not super accurate, but it's better than nothing. Okay, if you want to have a detailed measurement, then you need to use some other method. Right? So for example, like this guy is approximately 5 micrometer. Okay. Something like this might be shorter. Okay, like you might have to try to see how many you can fit. Right, but having a reference there is important. Allows you to make relatively accurate measurements. Okay, that's it for discovery science. No, actually, that's not it. That's it for observations. I mean, qualitative and quantitative observations. Once we make a bunch of observations, then we can try to identify patterns from those observations, and we try to see if we can come up with some kind of generalization. Okay. So we have like observations, observation 1, observation 2, observation 3, 4, so on and so forth. We can try to take all these things and put it into some kind of generalization. Okay, some kind of conclusion, if you would. This process of taking individual observations and making a general statement, this kind of reasoning is called inductive reasoning. It goes from specific examples to general examples. Okay, specific to general. Inductive reasoning, okay? Or sometimes also called induction. Okay. Let me give you a few examples to help you understand this. So back to school, I took my kids to buy some stationery at the Dollarama. And my younger one wanted to buy this eraser, those, fruit shape eraser, whatever, eraser, okay? But there was no price on it, right? So she came to me, she's like, how much is this? And then I was thinking, let's teach her about inductive reasoning. So I asked her where she got it, and she took me to the aisle, and she's like, I got it from here. Okay. I was like, all right, let's see. How much is the pencil? And she's like, oh, $2. Okay, good. How much is the ruler? It's like $2. How much are the staplers? $2. And then after a while, she's like, oh, everything here is $2. That's inductive reasoning, right? Looking at all these individuals' observations and making a generalization. Does that make sense? Now, here's the thing. She might be wrong, right? The erasers might be like $4 or something, right? Okay, but that's not the point, right? When we make inductive reasoning, we make a generalization based on what we observe. Whether it's valid or not, we actually don't know, right? We might have to do more testing about it, right? Here is another example. So if you look at a fly, the wings of a fly under the microscope, you see that it's made up of cells. So we can say fly is made up of cells. You look at a fish and you're like, oh, there's cells again. Fish is made up of cells. Tree is made up of cells. All right, mushroom is made up of cells. Birds is made up of cells. What's the conclusion we can draw? What's that?
Living things are made of.
Yeah, we can reasonably conclude that all living things are made up of cells, right? Does that make sense? Right? So observation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, I mean, this is obviously an oversimplification, right? Like you have to make a lot more observations. Okay. Like I don't just look at 5 students and like, okay, you know the answer, you know the answer, you know the answer. Oh, the whole class must know the answer. Like that's not accurate, right? Okay. So like in real life, you have to make more observations. But like I'm simplifying it for you to understand what this kind of reasoning is called. Inductive reasoning. Are we good? You sure? Okay, so most people are okay up to this point with the inductive reasoning. But as soon as I tell them about the deductive reasoning, then, you know, the reasoning gets a little bit confusing. So deductive reasoning goes from general to specific. Okay, general to specific. Maybe I'll put a little diagram here for you to understand, okay? You don't have to copy this necessarily. So observation 1, observation 2, observation 3, 4, okay? And then you have the generalization, right? And when you apply the generalization to other cases, that's deductive reasoning. So here from specific to general, that's inductive or induction. And then from general back to specific, that's deduction or deductive reasoning. Okay, so back to my daughter's example, she was able to conclude, oh, everything on this panel is $2. That's a generalization. And then the next thing she said was, oh, then the erasers must be $2 as well. Okay, so that's taking the generalization, applying it to a specific case. Understand that? All right. So we do a lot of these things in class, concept check questions. Some of these will show up on the quiz. Okay, no tricks. It's the exact same question. It will show up. Okay. In fact, I'll promise I'll put this one on. All right. So let's try to do this. And this is how we do it in class. Okay. You gotta do the question in your head. Don't yell out the answer. And then you're gonna show me your answer by putting up the finger. Right? If your thing is A, then you say 1. If your thing is B, then you put up 2. Okay. So on and so forth. All right. After you put up the finger, you have to look at me and I'll tell you whether you get it right or not. Okay, it sounds chaotic, but trust me, it works. I've done this for 20 years, okay? So here we go. Look at the questions and show me your answer. Remember to show me 1, 2, 3, or 4. Okay, good try. Yeah. Don't be shy. I don't even know your name, okay? So like even if you get it wrong, it's gonna be fine. Hey, participation is key here. What do you think the answer is? Is that an answer? Or yeah, that's good. Okay, very good. Good try. Anyone else? Okay, good try. 1 is A, B, C, D, okay? Yeah. Good. Good try. Not quite. Yeah. All right, so yeah, that's good. Okay, so let's take this up, okay? Let's take this up. Obviously, we can use some explanation here. Don't worry, not every question is gonna be like this, okay? Some questions are most questions are very straightforward, okay? But some of them requires you to think a little bit, okay? So let me just copy this here, and we'll take this up. Oops, that's really, really big. Try to make it smaller. Oh boy. $14. Okay, there we go. All right, so this question asks us to find the example for deductive reasoning. Can you help me out here? Deductive reasoning, is that general to specific or specific to general? General to specific, okay? So first answer, all viruses require a host to replicate. That sounds like a general statement, right? You know, like all living things are made out of cells, right? All of the stuff here is $2. That's a general statement. So that might be the answer. I don't know. Let's put a question mark there, okay? Make sure you read all the answers before you make your final choices. B, COVID-19, HPV, Ebola, influenza are viruses. They require a host to replicate. Therefore, all viruses require a host to replicate. This is going from specific to general, right? So that would not be the answer. We're looking for general to specific. C, all viruses require a host to replicate. That's possible, right? Again, it's general statement first, right? Last one, COVID-19 is a virus and it requires a host to replicate. Ebola is a virus, therefore it also requires a host to replicate. That's just going from one example to another example, right? There's no flow of logic, not going from general or specific or either way, right? So that's not the answer. So it's either A or C. All right. So let's see which one is the answer. They look very similar, don't they? Right? On the surface, the two almost have no difference to it. But let me use some highlighter to help you see what the difference is. Okay. All viruses requires a host to replicate. Okay. And then here it says COVID-19 is a virus, and then it requires a host to replicate. So if blue, then purple. And then here the statement is the same thing. If blue, because it's blue, then it's purple. Let's take a look at the other statement here. All viruses require a host to replicate. So again, if blue, then purple. And then it says COVID-19 requires a host to replicate, purple, and then blue. So you see, this is actually not correct because the flow of the logic is incorrect. Right? You have to do it in the same order in order for the logic to be correct. Now, this might be a little bit difficult for you to see because like people might not be familiar with viruses and all this thing. But let me try another example for you. Look, all birds have, what do all birds have? Sure, all birds have wings. Bees have wings. Therefore, bees are what? Bees are birds, right? Okay, let's see. All birds have wings. Bees have wings. Therefore, they are birds. You see how the logic is incorrect, right? If you go blue, purple, and then you flip the logic and say purple, blue, then it no longer makes sense, right? Obviously, birds are not, bees are not birds, right? Okay, so for that reason, this is not correct. Okay. The correct answer is going to be A. Okay. So I promise I'll put this question on the first quiz for you. Don't memorize the answer as A though, okay? Like it might not be A, like I might switch the order, but it's going to be the same question, I promise you. Okay, make sure you understand it. Any questions?
Same question with those examples?
Yes, exact same question. The order is going to be different though, okay?
Okay.
Fantastic. Let's move. We're almost there. Okay, we are gonna end at 10:20. So the discovery science is just making all these observations, and a lot of times it doesn't really offer any kind of explanation. Okay, we're just observing, we're just seeing things as they are. But with observations, we tend to ask questions about what we are seeing. Like, why is it behaving this way? What's causing it to do this or do that? And that kind of a science is what we call the hypothesis-driven science. Okay, And in hypothesis-driven science, we have a series of steps that we need to follow to investigate, to analyze, and to come up with new conclusions. And those steps are called the scientific method. Okay? So here are the steps in the scientific method. We start by making observations. We ask questions about the observations we're making. Don't write anything down, okay? We're gonna talk more about this next class. I'm just giving you a preview. Then you're gonna have a hypothesis. A hypothesis is like a educated guess, people call it. It's a tentative answer to your question. You make some predictions about your hypothesis, like what would the result be if I'm correct? What would the result be if I'm not? You go ahead and do an experiment to test out the hypothesis, and then you can make a conclusion from that. Let's use a very simple example to help you understand this. Let's say you try to turn on the TV and nothing goes on. The remote doesn't work. That's the observation, right? Remote does not work. The question you ask would be, what's wrong? What is wrong? Based on your previous experience, you can probably guess that the batteries are dead. Okay. So that's your hypothesis. You answer your own question. What's wrong? Well, must be the battery. Okay. So then you make a prediction. If you're correct, then replacing the batteries is going to fix the remote. So you go ahead and replace the batteries. Either it fixes it, then it's done. You solve the problem. Or if it does not fix the problem, then you need to revise your hypothesis. You need to come up with a different explanation. So what else might be the problem if it's not the battery? Yeah, the TV is not plugged in, right? Maybe, okay? Or the TV is broken, right? Okay, it could be a lot of other things. So then you try to problem solve using this method, okay? And here, you know, it says deduction usually takes the form of predictions about what experimental results or observations are expected if the hypothesis is correct. Right? Basically, it means you are applying some of the generalization that you had in the past to this specific example. Right, and apply it and see, you know, what the results are going to be. Okay, we still have a bit of time, so maybe let's just go through a few more slides here. Okay, so observations and questioning, those are the first two steps in the scientific method. Right. So here we have two plants. One plant is taller than the other. And let's say you have both of these plants in your house, right? So that's the observation, that the plants have different heights. Now, what kind of question are we going to ask? Well, logically, I think you would be thinking, why does one plant grow taller than the other, right? Why does one plant grow taller than the other? And what would your hypothesis be? What might be some of the reasons why one plant is taller than the other? The sunlight, yeah, the amount of sunlight. Anything else? The amount of water, yeah. Maybe one more, yeah. The environment that is in, maybe is the temperature, maybe it's the humidity, right? There are a lot of things that might contribute to the difference in height, right? So when you come up with a hypothesis, you basically make your best guess, right? Based on your own experience, you try to answer your own question. So to write a valid hypothesis, it must satisfy two conditions. You need to know this because you'll be writing hypothesis for your lab. A valid hypothesis must be testable and falsifiable. Testable means you can do an experiment to test it. Okay. And then the experiment would either validate your hypothesis or it would reject it. Okay. What does falsifiable mean? It means it has to be potentially wrong. You cannot have a hypothesis that's always correct. After all, if it's always correct and you know the answer, there is no need to ask that question in the first place, right? So a hypothesis must be testable and falsifiable. Things like opinions, cultural or religious beliefs, superstitions, myth, values, moral judgment, and supernatural stuff, these are not testable. Okay, so it should not be included in a hypothesis. Let me show you some invalid hypotheses. Animal testing is bad. Rock musics are better than classical music. Why are these invalid? Opinions, that's right. These are opinions. Okay, so therefore not testable, right? Not testable. Next one. The garden fairies make some plants taller than others. Why is that an invalid hypothesis? How do you know?
I've never seen one.
I've never seen a dinosaur either, right? Yes?
It's not testable.
Sure it is. We can sit in the garden and wait for the garden fairy. Right. But you can sit there your whole life and not seen one, but doesn't mean that they don't exist, right? It's not falsifiable. You understand that? Right? All of us can watch the garden and none of us could have detect one. And the opposite argument is that, well, you just haven't seen one. Okay. Maybe if you wait long enough, you will see one. It's not falsifiable. There's no way for this to turn out to be false. The counter argument is always that, well, it's because you haven't waited long enough. You understand that? Okay, so some hypotheses are not testable, others are not falsifiable. The last one here, everything that occurs is as a result of divine intervention. Again, there's no way of proving it wrong. Okay, so these things are bad hypotheses because they are not falsifiable. Not falsifiable.
The second one could be a myth, right?
The second one, the everything that occurs as that one,
No, the fairies.
the fairies, it's not falsifiable. Yeah, you cannot prove it to be wrong.
Yeah, because it's a myth.
It's
It could be
yeah, okay, yeah, it's superstitious things, exactly. Yeah. Are we okay? Okay, we're gonna be done after this slide, okay, don't worry. Valid hypotheses. Plants receiving more sunlight grows taller. That's a valid hypothesis. We can test it. We could be wrong. Maybe it's not the sunlight, maybe it's the water, maybe it's the temperature, who knows? We don't know until we test it. This one is, the internet, it's divided on this one. Driving with the windows down will increase fuel consumption. Do you think that's true? Who thinks it's true? Nobody? Okay, then we don't have to test it, right?
It makes the car slow. It
Like-
makes the car slower.
Huh?
Like when you're driving a certain speed, then you open your window, it makes it slower.
Right, so like maybe it depends on the driving speed, right? Maybe it's conditional, but the point is you can test it, right? You can drive, and we're gonna talk about how to test this next class, but you can drive with the windows down or with the windows closed, and check the fuel consumption, right? And therefore you can see whether or not this is true. This is valid or not. Taking melatonin will increase sleep duration. Do you guys know about melatonin?
Yeah.
Yeah, your brain actually makes it, but you can also take extra. And some people swear by it. The melatonin, if you take it, you sleep better. Others think it's placebo. Right? Placebo means it's like psychological effect. It doesn't actually do anything, but like you feel it's doing something. So therefore you sleep better, right? So that's something we can test. Right? We can give people blanks. They're not melatonin, but then we can tell them it's melatonin, and then we can assess their sleep quality, right? And that is going to help us to determine whether or not this is correct or not. So remember, valid hypothesis must be testable, and falsifiable. Okay. Falsifiable is one of those words that is a lot of people spelled it wrong. Okay, so please try to spell it correctly. Some people try to be sneaky on the test. Okay, falsifiable. Okay, so spell it correctly. I'm usually not too picky, but it has to be legible. All right, that's it. Thank you. Monday. All right. That's our next class. Enjoy the rest of your week.